Hi there, it's Dr. Bernstein, and in this video, I want to go over two of the opening paragraphs that people submitted as part of the practice exam last week. And I chose these two because they're similar in terms of the thesis, but one is more developed than the other. And I want to emphasize once again the importance of making a really strong first impression on your reader, because we're reading these essays all at once. We're going to be reading them carefully, giving each one full attention, but we're going to be reading a lot of them, and we're going to be reading them faster than we normally would if you were submitting, an out of class paper. And so the very first thing you want to do is make a positive first impression on your reader. You want your reader to feel, wow, this student really knows how to set up an argument, knows how to draw the reader in, flesh things out. I'm not saying going overboard and giving too many details, but really setting things up, making the reader feel like she knows where you're going with your essay. It's really, really important. And when I was in college, we often had to use blue books for our essay exams, and you will be using blue books for this exam. And basically, they're small little booklets that you'll be able to write in. And what I recommend doing is leaving that first page of the booklet blank and only writing on one side of the page. I'll explain that in class. But if you leave that blank, what you can do is write a rough opening paragraph on the inside of the blue book cover. And then once you've gotten all the way through your argument, once you really know exactly where you went in your essay, I would transfer and revise what you have on the inside of the cover onto that first page to really draw the reader into your argument. So you would want to leave yourself at probably an additional 15 minutes to do that. But a lot of people have a lot of success with that, because what happens is if you don't do that, a lot of times with timed essays, people will just try to get right into their argument and they sort of rush through their opening paragraph. And that's definitely not what you want to do in this situation. I mean, you want to use your time wisely, but you want to make sure that you start off on the strongest, most positive foot as possible. And so sometimes you can't really do that until you've gotten all the way through your essay. So that's a strategy that a lot of people find effective. Now, what I'm going to do right now is read you the two opening paragraphs and talk a little bit about them. So the first opening paragraph begins with a question, which is a nice strategy. We talked about using this when we covered advanced opening paragraph strategies. When is it a good time to start thinking about your future? This question is presented to all of us, and as children, we were frequently asked what we wanted to do when we got older. Is there a point when it's too soon to be asking these important questions? Might an early decision affect other areas of our lives? When Florida passed the 2006 bill requiring incoming high school students to declare a major and minor, it started to place too much pressure on the 14-year-old freshmen and will have a negative effect on their education. Okay, so the writer starts off with a question. There's some more questions in there. Those are good questions. And states a clear thesis. It's this bill placed too much pressure on the freshmen and will have a negative effect on their education. Now compare that to another person who had a similar argument. Young children dream of what they want to be when they grow up. Some kids long to become firefighters, while others might wish to become police officers or professional athletes. While they might fantasize about very different occupations, there is one thing that almost all children have in common. Very few of them will become what they dreamed of being as a child. It is therefore unwise to think that children, even teenagers, know what they want to do with the rest of their lives. Nevertheless, in 2006, Governor Jeb Bush helped pass a bill that required high school students to declare a major just as college students do. This bill is problematic not only because these students are too young to know what they want to do with their lives, it also puts too much pressure on them to make a decision with serious long-term consequences and prevents them from receiving the kind of general education that will help them broaden and clarify their horizons. So, um, the main difference here, obviously, the writer's not starting with a question, but she is starting with a similar issue about, how we were all asked this question about, what do we want to be when we grow up. But she creates a little bit more of a scene, a sort of vivid narrative that gives the writers a clear sense of this point. So it's not just that she's making a statement that young children dream of what they want to be when they grow up. She also gives some vivid details, like they might long to become firefighters or police officers or professional athletes. Um, then she mentions that underneath the surface of all this, there's something they all have in common. It's unlikely that they're going to become what they dreamed of becoming as a child, and then starts to transition into the thesis of this particular essay about the teenagers and high school students. And both writers, I like this. I really do, and I recommend doing this no matter what approach, or probably no matter what approach you take in your essay, is relate what your thesis back to relate it back in some way to the actual article or editorial that you're focusing on. So you're not just writing an opinion piece, you're sort of situating it within the context of the authors you're reading for the exam. So you'll notice both writers mention the bill in 2006. So the first writer does it here, and the second writer does it down here. So I recommend figuring out a way to do that, and just because it shows it, what it does is it shows your professors that you're not just writing an opinion piece, that you're coming up with this idea in response to the specific reading. And that's, from my perspective, that's something I imagine other professors will be looking at. And then, while this first writer states his thesis right at the end of the paragraph, which is fine, um, he doesn't give the reader a sense of the main points that he's going to be making in his essay. Or it's not, he states them. I mean, I can assume from here that there's going to be a paragraph on too much pressure and a negative effect, but it's not getting specific enough for me. Like, how is this going to have a negative effect on them? Is this whole essay going to focus on like three different ways it puts too much pressure on them? It's not clear to me. So I think that this writer needs to spend more time setting up his ideas, making a smoother transition from these big questions to the article and the thesis. So that's my take on this paragraph. But what you'll notice right here is, okay, this bill is problematic. So we know right away this bill is wrong in the writer's eyes. And we learn that it's wrong because the kids are too young to know what they want to do with their lives. Okay, so I'm assuming there's going to be a paragraph on this. It also puts too much pressure on them to make a decision with serious long-term consequences. So I'm assuming there's going to be a paragraph on this issue. And you could see this is much more detailed than what is up here, and prevents them, and I'm assuming there's going to be a paragraph on how this bill prevents them from receiving the kind of education that will help them actually, have a bigger, clearer picture of their lives. So I walk away from the second paragraph with a much clearer sense of the writer's argument. I feel more pulled into her argument than I do with the first one. So that's my initial feedback for you on the opening paragraphs. And I know I only covered two people's paragraphs, but you might want to think about how what I've said applies to what you've written yourself. That's it for now. Bye.